love this book, by the way. This book. Thumbnail right there. Fear and Loathing by Hunter S. Thompson. Okay. We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, I feel a bit lightheaded, maybe you should drive. And suddenly there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and driving all around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour, with the top down, to Las Vegas, and a voice screaming, Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals? Then it was quiet again. My attorney had taken off his shirt and was pouring beer on his chest to facilitate the tanning process. What the hell are you yelling about? He muttered, staring up at the sun with his eyes closed and covered with wraparound Spanish sunglasses. Never mind, I said. It's your turn to drive. I hit the brakes and aimed the great red shark towards the shoulder of the highway. No point in mentioning those bats, I thought. The poor bastard will see them soon enough. It was almost noon, and we were still more than 100 miles, and there was still more than 100 miles to go. They would be tough miles. Very soon, we would both be completely twisted, but there was no going back and no time to rest. We would have to ride it out. Press registration for the fabulous Mint 400 was already underway, and we had to get there by 4 to claim our soundproof suite. A fashionable sporting magazine in New York had taken care of the reservations, along with the huge red Chevy convertible we had just rented off a lot on the Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Strip, sorry. And I was, after all, a professional journalist, so I had an obligation to cover the story, for good or ill. The sporting editors had given me $300 in cash, most of which had already been spent on extremely dangerous drugs. The trunk of the car looked like a mobile police narcotics lab. We had 2 bags of grass, 75 pellets of mescaline, 5 sheets of high-powered blotter acid, a salt shaker half full of cocaine, and a whole galaxy of multiple-colored uppers, downers, screamers, laughers, and also a quart of tequila and a quart of rum, a case of Budweiser, a pint of raw ether, and 2 dozen amyls. All this had been rounded up the night before in a frenzy of high-speed driving all over Los Angeles County. From Topanga to Watts, we picked up everything we could get our hands on. Not that we needed all of that for the trip, but once you get locked into a serious drug collection, the tendency is to push it as far as you can. The only thing that worried me was the ether. There is nothing in the world more helpless and irresponsible and depraved than a man in the depths of an ether binge. And I knew we'd get into that rotten stuff pretty soon, probably at the next gas station. We had sampled almost everything else, and now, yes, it was time for a long snort of ether, and then do the next 100 miles in a horrible, slobbering sort of spastic stupor. The only way to keep alert on ether is to do up a lot of amyls, not all at once, but steadily, just enough to maintain the focus at 90 miles an hour, through Barstow. Man, this is the way to travel, said my attorney. He leaned over to turn the volume up on the radio, humming along with the rhythm section and kind of moaning the words. 1 toke over the line, sweet Jesus, 1 toke over the line. 1 toke? You poor fool, wait till you see those goddamn bats. I could barely hear the radio, slumped over on the far side of the seat, grappling with a tape recorder turned all the way up on Sympathy for the Devil. That was the only tape we had, so we played it constantly, over and over, as a kind of demented counterpoint to the radio, and also to maintain our rhythm on the road. Constant speed is good for gas mileage. And for some reason that seemed important at the time. Indeed. On a trip like this, one must be careful about the gas consumption. Avoid those quick bursts of acceleration that drag blood to the back of the brain. My attorney saw the hitchhiker long before I did. Let's give this boy a lift, he said. And before I could mount any argument, he stopped, and this poor Okie kid was running up to the car with a big grin on his face, saying, Hot damn, I've never rode in a convertible before. Is that right? I said. Well, I guess you're about ready, huh? The kid nodded eagerly as we roared off. We're your friends, said my attorney. We're not like the others. Oh Christ, I thought. He's gone round the bend. No more of that talk, I said sharply. Well, I'll put the leeches on you. He grinned, seeming to understand. Luckily the noise in the car was so awful between the wind and the radio and the tape machine that the kid in the backseat couldn't hear a word we were saying, or could he? How long can we maintain, I wondered. How long before one of us starts raving and jabbering at this boy? What will he think then? This same lonely desert was the last known home of the Manson family. Will he make the grim connection when my Tony starts screaming about bats and huge manta rays coming down on the car? If so, well, we'll just have to cut his head and bury him somewhere, because it goes without saying that we can't turn him loose. He'll report us to some kind of outback Nazi law enforcement agency, and they'll run us down like dogs. Jesus. Did I say that, or did I just think it? Was I talking? Did they hear me? I glanced over at my attorney, but he seemed oblivious, watching the road, driving our great red shark along at 110 or so. There was no sound from the back seat. Maybe I'd better have a chat with this boy, I thought. Perhaps, if I explain things, he'll rest easy. Of course. I leaned around in the seat and gave him a fine, big smile. By the way, I said, there's one thing you should probably understand. He stared at me, not blinking. Was he gritting his teeth? Can you hear me? I yelled. He nodded. That's good. I said, because I want you to know that we're on our way to Las Vegas to find the American dream. I smiled. That's why we rented this car. It was the only way to do it. Can you grasp that? He nodded again, but his eyes were nervous. I want you to have all the background, I said, because this is a very ominous assignment, with overtones of extreme personal danger. Hell, I forgot all about this beer. You want one? He shook his head. How about some ether? I said. What? Never mind, let's get right to the heart of this. You see, about 24 hours ago we were sitting in the Polo Lounge of the Beverly Hills Hotel, in the patio section of course, and we were just sitting there, under a palm tree, when this uniformed dwarf came up with a pink telephone and said, "This must be the call you've been waiting for all this time, sir." I laughed and ripped open a beer can and foamed all over the back seat while I kept talking. And you know, he was right. I'd been expecting that call, but I didn't know who it would come from. Do you follow me? The boy's face was a mask of pure fear and bewilderment. I went on. I want you to understand that this man at the wheel is my attorney. He's not some kind of dingbat I found on the strip. Shit, look at him. He doesn't look like you or me, right? That's because he's a foreigner. I think he's probably Samoan, but that doesn't matter. Are you prejudiced? Oh, hell no, he blurted. I didn't think so, I said. Because in spite of his race, this man is extremely valuable to me. I glanced over at my attorney, but his mind was somewhere else. I whacked the back of the driver's seat with my fist. This is very important, god damn it. This is a true story. The car swerved sickeningly, then straightened out. Keep your hands off my fucking neck, my attorney screamed. The kid in the back looked like he was ready to jump right out of the car and take his chances. Our vibrations were getting nasty. But why? I was puzzled, frustrated. Was there no communication in this car? Had we deteriorated to the level of dumb beasts? Because my story was true, I was certain of that, and it was extremely important. I felt for the meaning of our journey to be made absolutely clear. We had actually been sitting there in the Polo Lounge for many hours, drinking Singapore slings with mezcal on the side, and beer chases. When the call came, I was ready. The dwarf approached our table cautiously, as I recall. When he handed me the pink telephone, I said nothing, merely listened, and then hung up, turning to face my attorney. That was headquarters, I said. They want me to go to Las Vegas at once and make contact with the Portuguese photographer named Lacerda. He'll have the details. All I have to do is check into my suite, and he'll seek me out. My attorney said nothing for a moment. Then he suddenly came alive in his chair. God hell, he exclaimed. I think I see the pattern. This one sounds like real trouble. He tucked his khaki undershirt into his white rayon bell-bottoms and called for more drink. You're going to need plenty of legal advice before this thing is over, he said. And my first advice is that you should rent out a very fast car with no top and get the hell out of LA. For at least 48 hours. He shook his head sadly. This blows my weekend because naturally I'll have to go with you and we'll have to arm ourselves. Why not, I said. If a thing like this is worth doing at all, it's worth doing right. We'll need some decent equipment and plenty of cash on the line. If only for drugs and a super sensitive tape recorder for the sake of a permanent record. What kind of story is this, he asked. The Mint 400, I said, is the richest off-the-road race for motorcycles and dune buggies in the history of organized sport. A fantastic spectacle in honor of some fatback grosero named Del Webb, who owns a luxurious mint hotel in the heart of downtown Las Vegas. At least that's what the press release says. My man in New York just read it to me. Well, he said, as your attorney, I advise you to buy a motorcycle. How else can you cover a thing like this righteously? No way, I said. Where can we get hold of a Vincent Black Shadow? What's that? A fantastic bike, I said. The new model is something like 2,000 cubic inches, developing 200 brake horsepower at 4,000 revolutions per minute on a magnesium frame, with 2 styrofoam seats and a total curb weight of exactly 200 pounds. That sounds right for the gig, he said. It is, I assured him. The fucker's not much of a turning, but it's pure hull on the straightaway. It'll outrun an F111 until takeoff. Takeoff? Can we handle that much talk? Absolutely, I said. I'll call New York and get some cash. Love this book.